On Thursday night, I had ended a stream on Twitch and I was uploading my footage, waiting on processing and whatnot, and just kind of slowly getting ready for bed. And before I shut off my computer, like I'm on YouTube, as I'm like doing YouTube processing, I scroll past a video. It says Akira Toriyama has passed away. I'm like, man, stop posting this nonsense because on YouTube they're always posting this like, oh, new Dragon Ball movie, and then ends up being like some fake fanfic thing. There's like a lot of that on YouTube, so I was like, all right, whatever, I'll bite. So I did a Google search. I was like, oh my god, it actually happened, and probably for that reason, just due to the initial skepticism, it didn't hit me like right away. I was like, I really better like look within and take a moment because just at so many points in my life did Dragon Ball Z just it was just there with me from an early age, my teens, 20s, 30s, and now in my 40s. It's I still feel its impact, and with Akira Toriyama just passing away so suddenly in the midst of like, yeah, he had decades of work and so much that he created, but just with so much more to look forward to just right there on the horizon. He had so much more to give, and it's very sad that we're not gonna be able to see him, I guess, bring to light everything that he could have, that he wanted to. But we'd all better take a moment and appreciate if we felt that any of his work had any impact on us. And I was not okay. I was not fine. Didn't take long for me to really feel that impact. It was so much more than losing a celebrity. It was. I can't imagine that I would feel this way for any other kind of celebrity. Someone who I'd seen pictures of him. I'd never even seen him like on video. Like I've seen his sprites rendered in Chrono Trigger, which we'll be talking about that in a moment too. But when you really think about like wow, just what an amazing um, media figure, I guess, creator. What an impact! And had I not seen that on Thursday night before I went to bed, I would have slept much better. Sure, it was not a good night's sleep for me, but had I seen that like first thing in the morning, I'm sure I wouldn't have been able to go into work. And I tell you, that was a rough day. I was holding back tears all day through work, but I got to like the end of the day. It took a good 24 hours or so. I got to work it out a little bit and sleep it off, and I'm you know f- feeling more okay today, like more at peace with it, because I think lots of reasons. One, you have so many other people that feel the same way, and you can think about all the people in your life, as I've seen a lot of people discuss, that you may have forged friendships with based on your interest in Akira Toriyama's work, particularly Dragon Ball in most cases, probably. Um, and it's just it's really hard news for a lot of us. But just seeing so many people just share their feelings on it, it's made me feel like I had to do something similar. He was no small influence in my life. I would not be the same person I was today. I would not have um, done a lot of the things that I did. I had to write about it. I took some time, maybe like less than an hour or so. I wrote up a little essay actually, and just like with all my thoughts and feelings, just all the points I really wanted to make sure to mention when I pay my respects to Akira Toriyama. And I'm sure I'll miss some. I've had some kind of come to mind even just since writing this, like talking with friends and, just, like, again, just everything I've seen on the internet. So I'll get right into it. I'll just kind of sort of start going through what I wrote and add some things along the way because this is it. I mean, where do we go from here? It won't be the same. It feels like when you beat so many classic role playing games, which I would not have played were it not for Akira Toriyama. Think like, Final Fantasy VI, Secret of Mana, nothing that he was involved with, but think about like all the magic in the world just vanishing. And that's how it feels right now. But um we just gotta be thankful that we lived through such a time where we got to just experience his work and become inspired by so much of what this man did for us. So I'm gonna begin as far back as I can go, going back to the very beginning. I've been playing video games all the way through grade school. But when I was in 8th grade in 1995, I read Nintendo Power magazine about a game in which your first adventure in the game involves hacking your way through a medieval cathedral and a bunch of snake creatures disguised as nuns. That game, of course, was Chrono Trigger. And it opened a whole new world of Japanese role-playing games to me that captured my imagination well into adulthood and beyond. I'd never been interested at all in role-playing games before. I thought, I'll try something new. And I was immediately grabbed by just the quality of, the music and the graphics. I was like, this is already a lot more than I was expecting. And it just took, it captured me initially and it just hooked me from beginning to end. It was a rental when I first played it, and I seriously considered selling my NES at the time and all my games, all my Mega Man games, just so I could buy Chrono Trigger. My mother was just like, no, you don't do that. Just wait for like Christmas, and then probably we'll get that for you, because of course they will. They'd never seen me say anything like that before. Now, Akira Toriyama, of course, did the art for Chrono Trigger. So the point of that whole story is, it was from that moment that Akira Toriyama's art style became immediately recognizable to me, which will, of course, lead us into the next chapter, which is my introduction to Dragon Ball Z. I still have images in my head of flipping through fan-submitted artworks in like old like GamePro magazine. I remember seeing people, they would submit artwork like on envelopes. I remember seeing like Dragon Ball Z and like, spiky blonde hair on these characters. And at the time I was just like, what is this? Some kind of weird Japanese sports game? And it's just Dragon Ball Z. Sound like some kind of weird Japanese sports game. I was like, all right, this is pretty weird. It's got a neat art style. I didn't, of course, make the connection until I think much later that, it was recognizable for a reason. Caught my attention, stuck in my memory. Something, seemingly so insignificant, but I still remember seeing these images, not really thinking too much of it. But shortly after starting high school in 1996, a friend of mine finally introduced me to Dragon Ball Z, which had just recently begun its short-lived run on American Saturday morning TV. The very first episode my friend introduced me to was, I believe, the 4th episode, very shortly after Goku teamed up with Piccolo to fight Raditz. The over-the-top action and super attacks used by every character in this battle got me instantly and completely hooked. That was probably like the first big Kamehameha like in the Dragon Ball Z series. It was my first time seeing anything like that. And yeah, it was kind of weird to see characters like quantifying each other's power with numbers, but it's while it kind of ruins the mysticism in a way, it really kind of gives you the idea, the understanding that as these numbers keep increasing until they finally like start to become like insignificant and not measured, thankfully, after a while, really makes you understand that, oh my god, like they're just really going over the top, and they're really just breaking the limits of what we thought was possible. And this is coming from a generation that we grew up with, like Ghostbusters, Ninja Turtles, X-Men, what have you. And you got superheroes, you got super villains, but nothing on this like godly level where they're just always like finding the limit, breaking their limit, and um, always beyond everything. There's always greater heights, and so on and so on. It would not be long before I would start scouring the web for information on the series, the characters, and the lore. The internet, the home internet was in its early infancy at that time. I'd probably just gotten internet in my home very shortly after I'd heard of, or I should say, started watching Dragon Ball Z because it was on Saturday mornings at that time. And even the internet was in its early days, and even though the internet was in its early days, there's still a lot to learn, a lot of information there for me to discover. I would wait on large downloads of like brief, low resolution scenes from the Japanese show and movies, and watch them over and over and over again. I even decorated my high school locker with color printouts of all the action scenes from the show, and would transfer them from locker to locker year after year. Like special beam cannons and all that fun stuff. I kind of miss that old locker. When the show went off the air for about a year or two, I was in disbelief. The show like kind of just gotten started, and they were like, okay, it got pulled from Saturday mornings, like just gone, and like just right in the middle of the Namek saga. It's like, all right, well, maybe it'll come back at some point. I don't know, but for the time, I'd filled the void by seeking out other anime movies. At the time, insensitively referred to as Japanimation, to satisfy my curiosity, my cravings. Scratch the itch, if you will. And some of my friends dug it, while many were understandably shocked by the gratuitous amounts of violence and adult content. Those who grew up at that time may remember that Manga Man says, not for kids. If you look at any old VHS tapes, it was just like this character they created and they put him in the corner. Just kind of indicate that, hey, this is a cartoon, but, not the kind of thing you want to show to people underage. By late high school, the English dub had been picked back up by Cartoon Network. We had basic cable at home, and that network was not included, but I'd spent all my hard-earned allowance buying up every VHS tape as it was released, uncut and uncensored. By this time, its popularity had been spreading. I can't remember who it was, but I remember another student approaching me at school one day and saying, "So, did you hear what happened last night?" Referring, of course, to Goku transforming into Super Saiyan for the very first time in English. Dubbed. I'd not have cable, but I knew what he meant. We'd waited many years for the English dub to catch up to the Japanese series, which had ended around the time it began airing in North America. We'd all been well prepared for it, but once we finally got to see his first super transformation, it was still very special, a moment of celebration. And, we knew from then on, it's like, wow. It's like dreams can finally come true. This can happen. And life would never be the same again. Life could have been very different for me had I never been exposed to Dragon Ball. It got me back into drawing for a very brief period by late high school. I would draw like Ninja Turtles and like my own little amateur illustrations back in grade school. I'd write like comics and stuff just, for fun. Never really pursuing an interest in like, technique or anything, but just, whatever. I'd do it for fun. And I'll never forget an image of like a powering up Vegeta that I'd been working on for a period of time, just in like one of my notebooks. And watching the show on the Spanish channel Univision every morning before school may have helped me get that A+ I got in senior year Spanish. Or it may have had something to do with having 8th period Spanish and being friends with people in 1st period Spanish. It's not like they changed the test material from from morning to afternoon. But I don't believe it was any coincidence that I began my lifelong martial artist journey at around this same time. As I say, there's nobody who watches Dragon Ball Z and does not think of Goku and his dedicated training every time they practice martial arts. Is that an exaggeration? I mean, I'm not saying I train like Goku, but it's just, I find inspiration. I get those images in my head. Just as you're walking to the school every time, it's just like, all right, it's time to do it. It's, time to get serious. By the time I was in college, I began picking up bootleg VHS tapes off of eBay of all the Japanese movies. Japanese Dragon Ball Z movies, to be clear. In America, we only got 3 of them, all straight to VHS. Just the first 3, Dead Zone, World's Strongest, and Tree of Might. That's it. Nothing else was dubbed in English. In Japan, there were 13. There was 10 more. So I bought up the 10 I'd never seen, some of which had English subtitles in such horrible quality that I couldn't even figure out what was going on. But it was still money well spent. I could say that I saw all the movies. Japan had also aired a couple of TV specials, which we never got. The Trunks and Bardock specials, although I don't know if they were aired in that order or not. Chronologically, they'd be reversed. And I ordered those as well. And yes, these recordings included commercials. Early, mid-90s Japanese commercials. My mind was completely blown. My curiosity was piqued. In college, I'd studied Japanese for a year as an elective, just for fun. In my final year, I got elected president of the Japanese club. It was through these activities that I'd met people who had become interested in studying abroad in Japan. Once I'd heard how life-changing their trips were and how so many of them were planning to move there after college to teach English as a second language, I quickly decided that had I not chosen to do the same thing, I would regret it for the rest of my life. I would soon move to Japan and live there for over 5 years. When I first got there, everyone in their 20s and older was very familiar with Dragon Ball. You'll often hear it mentioned that before Akira Toriyama, manga was considered like sort of, like candy for the brain, I'll say. But it was he that sort of was very, I guess, how should I say? We credit him largely for creating manga that appealed to all audiences, boys, girls, young and old, people of all ages, everyone. They could all enjoy manga. It became like a medium of like real Japanese pride, I guess. So the whole point is, people in their 20s and older, they knew Dragon Ball. They knew the characters, they knew all that stuff, but the young kids still had no idea. Kids, they grew up with where they had, Japanese kids have plenty, like, there was like Pokemon at the time, and they didn't really have a clue about Dragon Ball. That was like old people stuff at the time. But once the series got rebooted a couple years later with, I think, Kai, I guess, although I never watched that. By that point, I started seeing kids like playing around, miming Kamehamehas and Makanko Sappos at one another, like special beam cannon for those who don't know. They're playing Dragon Ball with each other. I got to see that transformation in a very take place over a very brief period of time, and I was there for it. It was back, and it was here to stay. Not long after I'd returned to America, Akira Toriyama had begun working on Dragon Ball Super, which followed the continuity of Dragon Ball Z. It was like a dream come true. It was back. He got so pissed off at the crappy live-action American movie that got made that, at least this is the story the way I heard it, that he's like, that's it, I'm coming back and I'm making more. They've bastardized my boy. He was like, nope, that's it. I'm taking control of Dragon Ball again. And it got off to a bit of a rough start at first, at least in my opinion. I think I'm not the only one, but once it really got going, it really recaptured the feeling of watching it for the first time. I felt like a kid again. At this point, I was in my 30s. Speaking of kids, once my son was born and still very small, I couldn't get out much for a while, so I got caught up on every episode of Dragon Ball and GT that I'd missed out on. It was like on Hulu, but, subbed. But, you can't really do much, you can't really go out, but you're at home, you gotta, feed the kid and, just... Kid's not going anywhere. He's not mobile. So you're in front of the TV. I had Dragon Ball on and GT. And so he got exposed very early on, whether he realizes it or not. I would even lull him to sleep at night by singing the Japanese intros and outros. And when I didn't know the words, I would just kind of make them up, which I think he found pretty funny because I remember him like kind of laughing at me. I'm not even going to do it here. But yeah, I've definitely sang some Dragon Ball Z at karaoke before. I remember the final episodes of Dragon Ball Super, standing just right in front of the screen during the Goku and Frieza battle versus Jiren, walking a fine line between trying to get the volume up high enough to really get into it, but also without waking up my son who was asleep in his crib right on the other side of the wall. I remember literally standing in front of, like, on my feet, like right in front of the screen like this during, the final battle. This... why not? It's... Why not just get all the way into it? Why not just go all in? when Dragon Ball Super Hero came out, the movie, I got to take my son along, who was 5 at the time. I remember him turning to me and saying, "Daddy, I like the movie." "Me too, son. Me too." You probably also like that I got him like a big like icy that we shared, where I mixed all the flavors together. Probably the first time I took him to a movie, just he and I, alone. Maybe it was even the only time. Maybe, maybe not. But I think he'll remember it forever. Certainly I will. Good thing we took a picture to commemorate the occasion. Dragon Ball has ignited my interest in martial arts and in Japan. It has taught me the value of hard training, of forging strong friendships with people that you may at first view as rivals. People that you think you may never get along with could end up becoming valuable allies, friends even. And that no matter where you think the limit is, there's always something far greater than you've ever imagined beyond it, and again beyond that, and so on. I'm eternally appreciative of Akira Toriyama's legacy. I'm forever changed, and I intend to honor his legacy by sharing these experiences with my son. Only other thing I want to mention is, this being like a sort of a video game channel here, where we play a lot of like ROM hacks of retro games. I have to also mention, and I didn't write it in this essay, that the longest video game marathon I ever played was Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3. It had just come out, and I was like either done with college or like almost done, and like I remember I started one night, I just kind of started playing it. I remember I got a pitcher of water, a box of frosted mini wheats, and I was just like, I'm just gonna play this game until I unlock like everything. And I played it for 30 straight hours. And my roommates had like friends kind of come and go like during that time. And they're like, "What is this? We gotta come up with a name for when Tom like marathons video games like that. He's doing a Tom session." The term "the Tom session" had become coined by one of my roommates, and he would tell that story again later. Whenever I'd be playing video games for like too long overnight, you'd see me playing video games in the morning, like late college or after college. Like, "Oh, you doing another Tom session? Was it a Tom session last night?" And he always tells the story. "Yeah, like 4 in the afternoon. Okay, guys, I'm going to bed. See you later." And I don't know if any other video game marathon I've ever done comes close. But for me, that was my limit, and it was Dragon Ball. And again, it was Budokai 3. I don't think it was Budokai Tenkaichi 3. I get those mixed up sometimes. I think Tenkaichi was a bit later. I did some research earlier. I'm pretty sure it was Budokai 3. The music's still very much burned into my head from like the world map. And I just remember it was kind of a marathon to unlock everything, but I got all those characters, and man, it took some work, but I could not put it down. So, as a gamer, Dragon Ball, as a martial artist, Dragon Ball, and Dragon Ball again brought me to Japan. It was Chrono Trigger that made the impression on me, so that when I was finally introduced to Dragon Ball Z, I discovered a recognizable art style. And you could argue that like a lot of Japanese anime looks kind of similar. That's because they teach kids like to draw things like in similar ways by like singing songs about how to draw things. So, but I mean Toriyama, to those who are familiar enough with his work, you can spot Toriyama work. You may say that he draws the same face on everybody, and he absolutely does for humans. But what's so special about it? Look closely. Look at like not just the outfits he puts on people or like hairstyles or whatever, but monsters, creatures, animals, even robots, vehicles, the world, the afterlife, the universe, the multiverse. Everything he created, like, he did it his way, and he took us along with him. I can't think of anyone that's ever done anything on that level that I'm aware of. Will there ever be another Akira Toriyama? In my lifetime, who can say? But, from my teens to my teens in high school to, my 20s in Japan to my 30s, like with my son, to, now into my 40s. I was looking forward to so much more. I knew I needed to get a hold of like the manga for everything that he'd done since, the animated conclusion of Super. Although the less that can be said about Super Dragon Ball Heroes, that weird YouTube series that's like kind of helped market that weird arcade card game, the better. That was just like kind of hard to follow, really, because there was no like dedicated channel for it. You just had to kind of like look for fan subs or whatever, and it was just hard to kind of keep it all organized. And it had some cool character designs, but it was really story wise, like you couldn't really get into it the same way you could with like Dragon Balls. You didn't even really scratch the itch. I'm not even sure I saw every episode of that, but I kind of tried for a while. But Super, no matter what you say, Super was good for me, in my opinion. Battle of Gods, I didn't enjoy a whole lot. Resurrection F, I definitely did enjoy it. I felt like Super actually kept getting better and better. We don't all have to agree, but I'll say for me, I feel like he was really still taking it to the next level. He was, he put the same heart into it. When he introduced characters like Hit, like Zamas, and like that whole like inter-universal tournament at the very end of the series, where it was like what, over 100 warriors or something, like all in a giant battle royale. Just epic. Nothing else like it, and I enjoyed the conclusion. I can say I enjoyed it. That was entertaining for me. Anyway, it's a lot to say. I hope I said it all, because again, like, this is really it. But I wanted to say it. I feel great about telling my story. It almost feels like my story because it's just been with me for most of my life. And I'm sure everyone's got their own story, and I'm sure that a lot of us, may have as much to say or close. Again, just there's just so much. Without really saying too much more. Favorite characters from the series? Look, I'm a Yamcha fanboy, and I think he's an incredibly underappreciated character. I like anyone that has like unique attacks. He creates a ball of energy, makes it slap you in the face a bunch of times before it blows up. Plus the Wolf Fang Fist I always thought was pretty cool. And I was so glad that they did him justice in Dragon Ball FighterZ, which I just introduced my son to today for the first time, and he enjoyed it. We played some Dragon Ball FighterZ, which I never really got like, competitive at or super. I forgot how to play it entirely, but that's a character I really like, and it's just there's a lot. But it's, if you want to comment on anything, if you want to tell me your own story, if you made your own video, share it with me. Let's all share with one another. Help support one another. Just grieve through this and pay our respects to an absolute legend of legends, a real titan of anime, manga, and even video games. Thanks to anyone who may have sat through this whole thing. I just looked at how long that was. I thought I'd maybe talk for like 10 minutes or so, but just I could go on, but I'll respect everyone's time. I thank you all so much, and let's just be glad for what we got, that we were touched by such an inspirational figure, and just again, there is always something to look forward to. So let's just be positive and let's just keep it with us. I guess the best thing we can do is just pass his work on to, especially younger people. Keep the legacy going, because the ripples of this man's influence will likely be felt for many generations to come. Thank you all so much. Thank you so much to Mr. Toriyama. May you rest well. You've made the world just such a much better place.